Welcome to Level Up Tribes. Level Up Tribes provides resources to help you attain the necessary resources to level up your mind, body, and soul and realize your full potential. It is about exploring, learning, providing you with the tools from the experts for you to create a better version of yourself. I am your host, Agnes Goodwine, and welcome, Tribes. Today, I have Margaret Agard. Is that how you pronounce your last name? She's a former executive in high-tech industry. She's an author, a speaker, a Christian mystic, and a Reiki healer. And she's the creator of inhisfootsteps.com. She's written many books.
Two, actually two, and I'm working
on
my
Is it two?
Third.
You're working
two,
on
and
your
my
third
in process. Yes.
Yes. And so she's here to talk about giving God our to-do list, letting go of that control, and just surrender. So tell us more about your story. What made you pivot from that position and that career to now becoming the speaker, this author? What was that pivotal moment for you?
It actually happened as a result of learning to listen to God with this question in mind. What do you want me to do today? And sometimes it's just simple stuff. Sometimes it's like, whatever, but be kind, whatever you're doing. But often it's, call a certain person. And sometimes it's a fairly large project. Like the way I started writing is and this was years ago, of course, in around 1999, 2000, I heard write your life on the internet. And this was before blogs were big. WordPress was barely getting started. And so then I had to say, well, how will I do that? And I found a site where I started writing what was happening. And usually what I was writing is what was happening between me and God. And then after a few years of that, the thought came, now make a book. And I was trying to figure out how to turn it into a book when the thought came, no, just take what you wrote, this private place, private journaling place where people could respond, but we were staying anonymous, and make that the book. And that became my first book, which is In His Footsteps. I gave my to-do list to God. And as I look back on it, I thought, well, people say I want to give my life to God. And that's how I did it, because my day is my life. And so the pivot, I was still in the high-tech industry at that time.
Okay.
But then a couple years after that, my husband and I sold everything we had and started serving as missionaries. We were in Albuquerque, working with the inner city and helping in the jail, teaching in the jail. Then we went up to Alaska. We were working with the natives.
I actually saw that was going to be one of my questions. And since we're talking about it real quick, I love, volunteerism and just giving back to the community. And I saw that you did a lot of work with the foster kids too.
Yes. Foster parenting was something I had done during my first marriage, which ended after 25 years. And that's when I was a single mom. And, with 8 children, so financial support, had gone back to university. That's when I actually started praying and saying, I don't even know how to get through today. Just tell me what to do. And, eventually that became, he really did get my life in order then. So during our second marriage, we had a couple of foster sons. Their foster parents were moving and they wanted to stay in the high school they were in, and they asked if we would be their foster parents. And so I still had 2 sons at home in high school. And so we did that. Okay. And that's why I know what the transition for them is like. When we left our parents' home, unless you were a foster child at 18, they were still there as support as we got our first jobs, as we went off to college. But foster kids don't have that. And so on my website, I point to one of the organizations we support that help foster kids make that transition. And, because so many of them end up homeless, and the girls end up basically in the sex trade.
That one stood out to me because I've been mentoring a foster teenager since it's been 6 years now. She was 11 when I met her through Arizonans for Children. And so that's the big part, is that transition, from when they turn 18 to 24. That's like a big deal in that age range. It's like, what now? That just kind of stood out, and I wanted to talk to you about it and say thank you for doing what you do with foster kids.
And thank you for doing what you do. I'm happy you're mentoring someone, because that's really needed. Like you said, especially at 18 to 24. So hopefully she'll stay connected with you. A lot of what we do is, should we do this? We're prayerful. And we might as well stay on the subject a little bit. My sister adopted when she was in Alaska, and a family came to her and said, will you take our child? We can't take care of him. And they did. And he's part of the tribe, and the tribe decides if their child can be adopted outside the tribe. And
wow.
So they agreed. They thought they loved her. They loved my sister and thought she'd be great. And then later they asked if she would take 3 more children, and they prayed about it. And as a family, they said no. And they came back and said, well, will you take the 2 younger ones? And then they prayed about that. And the answer was yes. And so I think God will lead and direct us to where we need to be and to who we can care for. Yeah.
Yes. That's awesome. I love that. Have you always been spiritually connected? You always had that foundation? Yeah.
I remember at about the age of 6 or 7, can't remember whether it was 6 or 7, but it was right in there. I had gone into a church, and up to then, my parents were Christian. We went to vacation Bible school, that whole thing. I knew a lot about Jesus. And it's interesting, Agnes, I never, ever, ever believed in Santa Claus. I don't ever remember believing that. I just thought, well, that's a pile of whatever. But Jesus I believed in. And that day in church, it's just stayed in my mind so long. I felt like I met him. It wasn't, I was learning about him, but that I connected on a level. And I think children often do have experiences like that.
Yeah.
And so then I had a little Bible in my room. And once I learned to read, when I was upset, I would often go to my room and just read it. Psalms and Proverbs, New Testament. And so I had let's say a hunger for it. That's what I
like that. Yeah. When I saw your bio and I saw Christian mystic, I've never seen those 2 words together.
And that's interesting because this is back from 400 or 500 AD that people were being referred to as Christian mystics. And they were the people,
that more?
Yeah, people who sought out God and who wanted a close personal connection with him and to live their lives from that. And that I realized, that's what I've always done. It's always been that. How do I know when he's speaking to me? When I was in my 20s, I always felt the spirit of when he was present, or when I felt the spirit, what some people would just refer to as the spirit, and maybe other religions might call it bliss, that sense of peace and connectedness. Yes. And so I knew when I had that and when I didn't, but it took me a long time to actually begin to discern the thoughts in my head that were his thoughts, that were thoughts from outside myself. And I think we all have that. We all have this thought. People will say, I was leaving the house, I thought I should bring this, but then I didn't. Now I wish I had. What is that thought?
Yeah.
And so that's the thought I began to focus on. How do I recognize that thought?
Did you keep a journal of those things to say, wait a minute, something's happening here. Let me write this stuff down. Did you have those moments?
I've kept a journal since I was a teenager. I don't know. Maybe I thought I was going to be Anne Frank, but I wasn't. And then I go back and read them nobody will want to publish this, I can tell you. But I have often put it in, and I regret when I don't. But I do remember I did write about the time when I was in my 20s when I said, I don't know how to hear your voice out of all the voices going on in my head, including the one that's saying, what voice is she talking about? And so I had some experiences where I thought, this has to be God. This has to be God, because I was blessing other people's lives. They had prayed for a blessing, and I had a thought I should do something. And the thought kept coming back. I was kind of blowing it off. It was like, is this God or my ADHD speaking, like that, right? And so as I'm learning to discern it, I thought, well, I'll just try. And it was a good thing. Invite these people to dinner, And when they came, they explained that they wanted to start paying tithing. They didn't have enough money for tithing and food. And they prayed about it and felt like it was okay to pay their tithing. And they were going to church. When they left church that Sunday, they had been invited to dinner every night of the week but one. And that was the day I kept thinking, invite them to dinner, invite them to dinner. And I'm like, I'll invite people on a Monday night, like that. Right. But then I thought, what, I'll just do it. And that's when I started thinking, oh, that must have been God. So how do I discern that voice? And some people do journal. For me, the thought is a good thought, and it continues to come back. It's very soft, but I get the thought more than once until I think, oh, wait, this is probably God. And then I do it. Now, I've been doing that for 50 years. So I've gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah.
They say, if you're going to try it, don't expect, like sitting down at the piano, that you're going to play Great Balls of Fire. Probably going to have a hard time getting Twinkle Twinkle out, but as you practice, it becomes more clear.
I love that. I'm big on that, and listening to your intuition, or
Yes.
just finding stillness. I have a very busy mind. I'm always busy, thinking busy is always good, but sometimes no. Sometimes you have to kind of like stop and find that stillness so you can find that guidance, right, from our higher self, from God.
Yes.
You talk about giving God your to-do list, meaning like letting go of that control, right?
I do. I make one. I think he likes us to think things through and think it out, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I used to do it in the morning, but I found out I have to do it at night, because in the morning I often leap out of bed. I'm ready to go and I'm committed. I'm doing this. And then I don't like him to interrupt it in order to change it. So it's better if I do it at night. Here's what I'm planning to do tomorrow. And what's interesting, Agnes, is I like to say, as a result of it, I got the most beautiful, unexpected life I never even knew was possible until I had it. And it was as you said, sort of a gradual shift. It wasn't like you got up one day and said, oh, I'm going to go be Mother Teresa in India. No, start a podcast. And what I found is he often took things off my list that really weren't necessary.
Tell me more about that.
I love to crochet. And at one point when we moved, it was just giving up crocheting for a while. And because you have enough other things to do, and you don't want to interfere with the most important thing you could be doing. Oh. So what's the most important versus it's good, but it's not the most important.
Yes.
And some of the changes are simple. So like I would have a list. I probably have today's list and how I changed it. So I was like, here's what I think I should do today. I'm going to do this podcast. I want to get up, I'm going to read the scriptures, do my rowing. I have a rowing machine, which I like because I'm lazy, and I get cardio. I get cardio sitting down. It's like, that works for me. And then I have 2 calls I'm going to make. And then I was crossing stuff off. Don't do this. Don't do this. You're not going to have time. Then we got up this morning and the washing machine was leaking. So we spent an hour with my husband looking at YouTube videos. So I was like, I wasn't going to have time for that other stuff because and often what comes is, I want you to call a certain person. And when I call them, they will say, I just needed someone to talk to. Oh, it's very simple things. Yeah. I can tell miraculous, wow, look, this great thing happened, but that happens about once a year. Right. And the rest of the time, it's very simple.
Okay. And it does sound simple. So your technique is to write your to-do list at night. And that way, when you get up in the morning, you kind of have an intention for your day. Yes. And not to be so rigid in regards to your list either. Right.
Right. Like, oh, this will take me like 3 hours and I have 12, and you're like, oh, well, guess what? Other things are going to come up. So, and do those because they are good things. And if I was committed to a 12-hour day and something else came up, it would be upsetting to me. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, this is interfering. But now my reaction is, oh, good. This is what I'm supposed to be doing instead. Yes. So, and once I put one of these lists together, I thought it was a good list. I thought God would like it. It was, I was going to call some people. I was maybe making someone a meal, and then I was doing stuff for my business, and it's all written. Right. And I said, what do you think? And I could feel and say, that is a good list.
I like it.
Yeah. And then he said, would you mind changing it? And I thought, well, I'm not going to be real happy, but sure, I'll change it. And at that point, I was studying to be a massage therapist. He said, I want you to just spend today taking care of your husband, because you know how hard he works and how many pains
Oh,
he has. And I want to make sure you give him a nice long hour massage. And so, he will point us where we need to be.
yes. Yes. I love that. I love that. I usually do my to-do list in the morning, but I think I'm going to change it up. I'm going to test it. I'm going to do it at night.
Just test it. Try it for a week and see
Yeah.
what happens. And sometimes I have a thought, like once my thought was call this woman. I like you, I know quite a few people.
Yeah.
And so odd names will come. I have 16 cousins. Once it was call this particular cousin. We talk maybe twice a year. And I called her and she was so upset. She said, Margaret, I had just been going to get a paper bag to breathe into because I was getting, how you hyperventilate. And then she just talked for half an hour. And then she said, I feel so much better. Thanks for calling. Like, how would I know to call her? That's the kind of thing that happens. And another time the thought was call this friend Karen. And I thought, well, Karen's medication, she doesn't even get up till noon because
Right.
she can't sleep at night. So she sleeps in the morning. And the thought came, call her at 1. So, we've got these phones, right? So I pull my phone out, set an alarm for 1:00 and call Karen. And she said to me, it sounded like she was in an airport or something.
Yeah.
You know how it sounds cavernous?
Yes.
And she said, oh, thank goodness you called. I just needed to talk. My brother was just diagnosed with brain cancer and they've given him only a few months to live. And I was thinking, when did this happen? And she said, 5 minutes ago. And
Oh
I
my
said,
God.
5 minutes ago? And she said, where are you? And I said to her, where are you? And she said, well, I'm in the hospital. I'm in the hallway because the doctor just finished talking to us. And I just went out in the hallway and I thought, I wish Margaret would call. Why would you even think that? I wish Margaret would call. It's not like we were bosom buddies. And that's when I called. And I just think, oh, I do pay attention. And I sometimes ask questions like, should I do it right now? And I'll sometimes feel a time. Or do I need to do more than that? Am I supposed to make a meal? No, thank goodness, because I hate cooking, but I'll do it. But, yeah.
That's awesome. It seems like you're very intuitive. That why you did the Reiki? Is that how you became a Reiki practitioner too?
What happened is I wanted to become a massage therapist. I was tired of high tech, no touch. And anyway, I met a man who could teach people to do massage therapy in a couple of weeks because it was 12-hour days. Like you just came for 12-hour days for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and got in a ton of hours.
Okay.
But the first thing he did was give us all Reiki attunement. It wasn't as if I planned to get that. I just
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I could tell the difference. I felt it the way you feel electricity. I could feel this energy. And people, when I touched them, could feel this energy. So, people will say, well, can you do that and be a Christian? And
yes.
I asked that question because I'm talking to my higher power all the time. Like, is this okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what I'm connecting to is a life force, right? That's what Reiki means, a life force. And that's what Christ did. And I learned Reiki healing. Distance Reiki healing is what level 2 is. Level 3 is when you can tune other people to Reiki. And I haven't gone to that. And Christ did the same thing because remember the centurion or someone came to him and, my servant, could you heal him? And Christ starts to stand up. He goes, oh no, you don't have to go there. You just do it from here.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm a Reiki level 1. And so when we were discussing that during our certification, Jesus' journey came up. And there was a point, and, correct me because you know more about, these kind of stories than I do, but there was a point in Jesus' life that we don't know what happened in between. There were many years.
From 12 to 30. Yeah.
Yes. And so it was said that in his travels between those times that he traveled to places like in India, that Jesus was so attuned with that God, with consciousness, with everything. Like he was that, what we're trying to learn now, he knew that. And that actually made me feel Good, because I've always struggled with the in between, right? The religion and spirituality. I grew up in a Catholic based
Right.
home, and so I've always had a struggle. And when she said that, I was like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like my heart
Yeah.
opened. Like it's not a bad thing. Like it's okay, you know, to meditate, right? Like, you know, some people think of meditation like, well, no, that's bad. Well, Jesus meditated, you know, too. He talked about that in his own words. And so I'm so glad that you open this window to discuss, right? For those that might be listening and are struggling with kind of connecting the two, right? Because you kind of found it. You kind of
Yes.
found both of them and say, you know what, I am a Christian mystic, and this is what I give to those that come before me, you know, and that is love, that is connection,
That is
right?
love and connection. And I also, now from the Catholic perspective, I think some Catholics had an upbringing that was, you don't try to feel the Holy Spirit, that's past, right? But others do. I mean, it's a big church with lots of different
Yes.
sections, you know, the Jesuits,
Yes.
etc. So how I found out about contemplative prayer was going on a 3-day silent retreat that was led by a Catholic nun. And yes,
What?
yes. And I just did one last year where I did the 5-day silent retreat with a father down in South Florida. I mean, it's a whole like retreat center. But yeah, so there are Catholics who are very in tune to hearing that spirit. And that is what contemplative prayer is. And or some people call it centering prayer. And that started, and that again was around like 300 or 400 AD that people were first
Mm.
talking about that. So it's a tradition. And that is, I call it, the difference between that and meditation
Yes.
is a conscious connection and opening to the spirit.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I've just been reading Rich Lewis's book, and he likes to be on podcasts. You might want to reach out to him because he's
What's
on
his name?
Rich Lewis, Louis. And he's oh my gosh, I turned my phone off so I can't pull it up. But he's written a book on centering prayer.
Okay.
You know, there's Father Keating is probably the most popular or well-known one. But you know, I think he's dead, so you can't reach out to him. But yeah. So Rich will do. But
Oh,
yes.
Margaret.
So I do that. And when I was first doing it, it was more like meditation. Like I'm here trying to reach you, God. And then when I read Rich's book, I realized, oh no, this is his time to come to me. And my attitude has changed to, I'm here for whatever you want to show me. I'm just here. I mean, it could be nothing or it could be something. And I'm
Yeah.
just here for you. And I'm going to sit in silence and quiet my thoughts, just like you do with meditation, and
Yeah.
and wait for that spirit. And I know what that spirit feels like. So
Yeah.
I met a Catholic priest. It was actually, well, I had a radio show for a while, but it's been like 7 years. And he said the way he met God and became a Catholic priest is he was raised in California by parents who were basically agnostic, but they did teach him to meditate. And he said one day in his deepest meditation, he met God and then became a Catholic priest. Not quite seeing the connection there, but that's what he did, and was really a strong believer in teaching centering prayer.
Do you have a favorite like scripture or prayer?
When I'm doing my contemplative prayer and I'm having a
Yeah.
hard time quieting my thoughts, this is the scripture I use. Be still and know that I am God. And then I make it shorter and shorter. Be still and know that I am. You know, be still and know. Be still. Be. And then I just sit. Yeah. So I like that one.
That's beautiful.
And then the other one that I use all the time, there's one that has to do with gratitude. Because that changed my life. Gratitude changed my life from being a big victim to realizing that I can always have everything I need.
Yes.
And the other one is Romans 8:28. A lot of people use that one. All things work together for good for those who love God, for those who are, and you know, we know good things work for good. So it's where they're talking about the bad things. And that has helped me get through some tough times. I'm like, well, God's going to figure out a way to make it work in my favor.
Yes.
And it happens all the time.
Yes. We just got through a pandemic, and I can't believe that's almost like 2 years ago,
I know. I
right?
thought it would be a few months.
I know. And now we're like discussing like this war. So our
Oh my
bodies, like
gosh.
our nervous system has been out of control in the past 2 years. From We're constantly in this fight and flight, and when our nervous system is out of control, that's when disease comes
Yeah.
through, depression. So I really love the fact that we're talking about letting go and your tools in regards to when we do feel that life is out of control and we're in burnout, we just burnt out. You don't know how to voice what you're feeling, but you're burnt out. That just writing your to-do list, having that discernment, finding that prayer, finding that stillness. And I think you gave us great tips today to at least start a foundation, a practice,
Yes.
a practice.
Practice. And then in the evening, for a long time, sometimes I forget, I report back. Okay, this is what
Okay.
you told me to do, and I did it. And
Yeah.
I feel his pleasure. I feel his like, see,
Yeah. I told you so. Listen to me.
see how good that worked out. Yeah. And when I'm doing what he has told me to do, when I'm really staying in tune with that, I don't get upset or burned out. Because if something didn't get done, I'm like, well, he knew it wasn't going to get done, and somehow it's all going to work out. If I'm
Yeah.
going to an appointment and all of a sudden I'm in a big traffic jam, I'm able to just sit back and think, well, probably something's going to happen on the other end. And people will actually say, oh, thank goodness I was running late. I'm so glad you're late. Like, I'm hardly ever in a position where I'm having to apologize. So it's like, I don't know. He just knows. Well, he would,
Well,
because
of
he knows the end
course.
from the beginning, but yeah.
I love it. So what's next for you? Like, I know you have this new book coming out. When does it come out?
Well, I wish I knew. What can I say? Last year I thought I was going to come out, and I actually write like a New Year's letter to myself the next year, to my future self. Oh, here I am, and here's what I am hoping to accomplish this year. That's how I used to write them. And then one year, a few years ago, we were living in West Virginia. We'd lived there 10 years. We were going to die there. And I put down, you know what? So I can't even guess what's going to happen, because none of my letters have ever been right. So the only thing I can know for sure is we'll be living in West Virginia, and we closed on our house in Florida 2 days before the next New Year. So
Oh,
like,
wow.
not even that was right. But so last year I was thinking, I'm going to get that book finished because I have so much time. And I started to write what I was going to do. And I felt the Spirit say to me, and I wrote it in my letter, just deal with what comes up. And that's all you're going to have time for. And
Wow.
what came up was smoke damage in our house using our fireplace. The whole house was filled with smoke. Everything had to be repainted, everything cleaned, furniture moved around. The whole fireplace had to be rebuilt.
Wow.
And it took 8 months of dealing with not just the insurance company, but contractors, especially during COVID. And it was like, oh my goodness. And a good friend died who had no family. I was her executrix. Don't ever just like off the, like, whatever. Oh, I'll be your executrix.
Oh my God.
Yeah, don't do that. So between those two things, there really wasn't a lot of time. Yeah. So this year I'm like, can I do the book?
Did you self-publish the other one? The other two?
Yes, the first two I self-published. I always thought I would, because I was an internet marketer. I've been marketing stuff on the internet since 97.
Oh, okay.
And yeah. And so I thought, well, I don't know how to do this. Well, it turns out I'm not that good at books. I probably sold 5,000, 6,000 copies of the first book, which is actually good. I think the average is about 100, unless you're with one of the big publishers.
Yes.
Yes. And then the second one, I haven't really focused on as much. The one about the missions is called, yeah, we sold all we had and followed as God created miracles and changed hearts. And I'd say he changed our hearts the most.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
What does that process look like of like self-publishing? So you just get on the laptop, type away. Is there a software that you use to?
Yes. When I first started doing it, it was harder because it was like 15 years ago. But now it's much easier. There's what I would do is join a writers group online because there are quite a few steps. And I would definitely pay to have it edited. And I would definitely pay to have a professional cover done. And that's going to cost like a couple $1,000s to do those two things.
Wow.
There is a cost. I would join a writers group nearby that meets regularly and have my work critiqued, because I would think, oh, this was clear. Like I understood what I meant when I wrote it.
Right.
Reading it and maybe saying, did you mean this or that? And I think, oh, okay, I can make that clearer. So yeah, it's always good to have it read. And then once it's up, you have to market it. Well, you know what? If you go with a small publisher, you have to market it.
Mm.
So you are going to be doing the marketing anyway.
Okay. They're going to make you do it. The publishing company?
They will only do so much for you. You know, if they think you're going to be the next Stephen King, they're all over you. But if they're thinking they might break even or make a little on this book, they might set up a few podcasts or interviews, but you're going to be doing it. And, you know, Agnes, you have a podcast going now. It's the kind of thing that as you go for a while, and if you decide to write a book, that's your platform. They're looking for a platform. How many people are you connected with who might buy your book?
Yeah,
that's what God says to me. He said there are some people who would never get the concepts you're sharing except from you, because they like how you write and they get it. You know, they're never going to read Thomas Keating. They're never going to read the Bible, but they're going to get this because of how I write it. And that's what's happening with your podcast.
Is there anything else that you would like to add or discuss that perhaps we didn't touch on today?
One of the first things that happened while I was doing this is I had a 15-year-old son who was just driving me crazy. You know, and I loved him because he was my son, but I didn't like him much. He was kind of arrogant and critical, and he'd ask for expensive things, and I'd be like, damn, we can't afford that. And he'd say, well, you should have thought about this before you had so many kids, like how you were going to take care of us. And I was like, you know what, Dan, even if I had the money, I wouldn't give it to you for $100 pair of shoes. You could get a job and buy them yourself, right? So that's kind of how our conversations went. And so God said, I want you to pray to see him as I see him. Now, I use this prayer all the time now. I use it in our marriage prayers. I use it with someone I'm working with. I'm using it with someone I'm helping who I think is the biggest screw up, you know, like help me see this person as you do. So I'll tell you my son's story. Right after I prayed that prayer, I was at my mom's house, and this is back in the, I don't know, 93 or 94 time. And I am reading a women's magazine. She had like a stack of them next to a chair. And as I'm reading through them, I see this story that, it reminded me of something that had just happened in our town. It was about a boy who had accused a favorite coach of, you know, sexual misconduct. And as I started to read it, I thought, oh, wait, this is our town. This has happened here in our town. And as I read it, he was talking about how it was a favorite coach. There were signs all over town, people trying to raise money for the coach's legal fees. And at school, he was pilloried, especially by some of the athletes. He was just not treated well. And actually, my son, Daniel, he's big, tall, and he started on 3 varsity teams, like 3 sports. He was a starter. And so I'm dropping him off. So what this young man said in the article is he actually became so depressed, he was almost suicidal. And what he had next to him on his bedside stand was a petition in a frame of people who had said they supported him. And there were only a few names on it. And the minute I read that, I knew, I remembered. One day I was dropping Dan off at school, and he said to me, I've written a petition to support this boy, and I'm going to asked the principal if I can pass it around the school and get signatures on it so he knows he's not alone. And then when I picked him up that afternoon, I said, how'd it go? He said, he was mad. He said, the principal wouldn't let me do it. He said, we can't talk about this at the school anymore. It's a legal matter. And no, you cannot pass that petition around. So he and a few friends signed it and gave it to the boy. And that's the person God saw.
Beautiful.
So, yeah. And how often does that happen? Like you're flipping through who even write that article, or that I would come across it. It really was an answer to prayer. Help me to see my son as you see him.
Yeah. That's like divine timing or divine nudge. That was
the same way with my husband. Like we will pray in our prayers together. Help us to see each other as you see us. Help us to love each other as you love us.
Yes. How many years have you been married?
25 now. Actually, we're 25th is this year.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. In a couple of weeks, actually.
What's the secret to a long, supportive marriage?
It's interesting because
patience.
Patience. People, they'll read that thing from Corinthians 13, love. And I'm like, how it starts out with love, suffereth long and is kind. Well, the long suffering is about to start. So yeah, you read that at your wedding and then you look at it again later. But what I had done, God had said to me once, you're going to meet the man you're going to marry next fall. And I thought, no, thank you. I want to get married again. And for a second, I have 2 teenage sons still at home, and I'm not sure stepsons and stepfathers, especially that age, work well together. So, but I did meet and marry Parker. That's what the 3rd book is about. What happened, because I come from a background of a family with alcoholism. My grandfather was an alcoholic, but my parents weren't. But I think, you pick up the behavior traits.
Yeah.
And so I say, I don't marry alcoholics. I marry sons of abusive alcoholics. And so he was wounded. He was, and there's a certain attitudes and behavior traits that people take on. And so our marriage did not look like a match made in heaven when we first married, Agnes. So part of it was that prayer, which I had learned by then and began to pray.
Yeah.
The second was just before I met and married him. I said, what's he going to be like? And God said, well, why don't you make a list of the top 10 traits you're looking for? And so I wrote it down, and I could check him off. Every one of those things was on it. Although later I thought, well, God, I thought there were some things that went without saying.
Right.
Yeah. So, it'd be a longer list now. But then when I was upset with him, I could take that list and look at it and think, yeah, he's still that man. Everything that was on that list, he's still that man.
Yes.
And I had made 2 commitments, which I have to tell you, they were kind of hard to keep. And one was that when he was upset, I would say to him, I'm on your side. I heard someone say that once. Her husband was upset and he was kind of taking that on her. And she said to him, I'm on your side in this. I'm here to help you.
Beautiful.
And so he would be so angry and he would have his back to me. It would look like, like if you touched him, like if a string is strung too tight. Yeah. And I would have to say to him, I would be upset too, And so I'd be down there saying, I'm not going anywhere. I'm on your side. I'm here for you. Well, for children who have grown up with abusive alcoholic parents, abandonment is a big issue. And it's one of those things. So it was the perfect thing to say to him. Like, I'm not leaving. You could tell me to leave. I'm not doing it. Yeah. He wasn't abusive in the sense that, physically or even emotionally, but he would close himself off. I
just love when people are married 25, 30, 40 years. I always ask, like, what's the secret? You know what I mean? Because, there's a whole lot of stuff that went on.
Yeah. Well, and see, it's the opposite of my first marriage, which at some point God was like, you need to end this marriage. And we were married nearly 25 years too.
Wow.
And the only thing, because I'm like 72, so 2 marriages of about 25 years.
Okay. Well, you look good, Margaret.
I look good. Yes. I have the filter.
Yes.
So, yes.
I love your sense of humor. I love it.
And I remember I kept trying to work on it. And I was praying similar prayers. And at one point, I said, I don't know why I'm ending it now, because I've stopped being upset by him. He just, whatever he did, it just didn't upset me. So we didn't have arguments or anything. And one of my sons said to me, you stopped arguing and then you got divorced. I understand it. And I said, well, God said to me, the children are almost past saving. Now, I don't know what he meant by saving, but all he had to do was say, you're doing this for the children.
Yeah.
That had me do it. And in the second marriage, when I was struggling, should I stay married? I received this promise: all will be made whole as a result of this marriage. And in the Christian world, whole means spiritually, mentally, emotionally, as well as physically. When Christ used those words, thou hast been made whole, that's what he was talking about. And that's what got me through the hardest times. Like, there's a promise here. If we can figure out how to heal each other and work through this, then all my children and his children will be affected.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that.
That's what the book is about, actually, that healing. If I finish it, we will see.
You have to finish so you could come back on the show and talk about it.
That's right.
Are you holding any, like, not women's circles, but just meetups to talk about this kind of things? No. I'm like, do your thing, read your book, read the book, pay attention and try it. And as you make that connection, then you'll know who to connect with. Yes, I love that. I'm so happy that we connected. I learned so much from you. I laughed a lot. So I love it. If you're ever in Phoenix, Arizona, please reach out so we can connect and have coffee and chat a little bit more.
I'm going to do that. I usually come in the fall. I have family.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Oh,
okay.
Yes, please. Let's stay connected. We'd love to meet you.
I'll make a note. I'm going to make a note in my calendar.
Okay, awesome. What is the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
On the first page of inhisfootsteps.com, at the top, there's the books, the links and the audio books. And then as you scroll down, you'll see at the very bottom, all my social media links so that you can go from there and link up. I'm more active right now on Instagram and Facebook than the others. And then in the corner, I don't do one of those big pop-ups, but in the corner, there's a pop-up to get the monthly newsletter. I usually will include a story similar to the ones I've shared today, and that they aren't in the books. They're just new things that have happened. And I only do it once a month because I'm busy. I do it once a month.
Right. I know. Well, awesome. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. And so, I'm looking forward to whatever you're going to do next.
Thanks, Agnes. And good luck with your podcast. I think you're really helping people.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please visit the website at www.leveluptribes.com. And please subscribe to the podcast and share with your family and friends. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. Catch you all next time, my beloved tribes.